What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan.
And Bri.
And today we are going to share with you our CanJam 2025 experience to New York City. Take two. All right, guys, so this video is going to be a little bit different from previous CanJam videos that we've done because we actually didn't listen to a ton of gear. Don't get me wrong, we got a lot of listening time in, but that's because we got to do some interviews that you guys are going to see during this video. Of course, we listened to quite a bit of gear. We did a live stream while we are at Audio 46. By the way, guys, shout out to Audio 46, and I'll link them here because huge thanks to them for allowing us to do the live stream right at their store, which you'll hear about here in a minute. And we are gonna give you our personal best in show based off of what we listened to at CanJam. But I don't know, before we get into all that, I think Bri's got a couple more things to say.
Yeah, I just want to give a big thank you to Jude, Brian, Ethan, Warren, and all of the rest of the Headfires, just the staff, the volunteers. Just a big thank you because there's a lot of work that goes into putting on CanJam and it was incredible. I do also want to give a big shout out to some of you that came up and introduced yourselves at CanJam. I've got my list over here. We've got Sunny, Juanita, Benji, James, Marcus, William, Robert, and I know there were a few of you that we did not get your name, so I do apologize, but just a big thank you. It's always nice to put a face to a name and, you know, just thank you for your support.
Yeah, and while we're in the spirit of thanking, I want to thank Bri because I am always terrible with names and I wanted to learn everybody's name that I met at CanJam, and so she was nice enough to write those down as I was meeting everybody. But guys, that was super cool to have anybody walk up to us and talk to us about audio, right? And just, you know, what they were doing at CanJam and very cool. And so, I don't know, with that, should we get into it? Oh, by the way, I do have chapters on this video because it's gonna be longer. So I'll take care of you guys with that. You can skip around, watch what you want, but, you know, do us a favor and try to watch this in its entirety at some point. It's not longer than The Godfather, at least. Right, Jude? So we flew in Thursday evening and we headed straight over to Audio 46 because I needed to get an idea of the setup I was gonna have for the live stream. And that night was pretty cool because we got to meet some of the people at Audio 46 that I actually communicate with over the intranets. And my buddy Rigo, definitely always enjoy talking to Rigo. And then also Tony, and then also Alec and Delaney. Yes. So that was pretty cool to get to talk to all of them Thursday night, get a chance to take a look at the setup. And do you want to talk about the live on Friday?
Yeah, so just going off of what he was saying, we did get to check out some headphones while we were in Audio 46 on Thursday night. So that was really cool because CanJam can get a little loud. So it was nice to have a good solid listen in a quiet place. Yes. But then during the live, we had the Water Cooler Gang who showed up.
Water Cooler Gang!
Yeah, and that brought in just some liveliness with the Headfires. There were some other people that came in, and we also got a chance to talk at length with Warren, which was really cool.
Yes, we did. And, you know, we might have asked some questions there that were a little bit interesting, but also, guys, if you happen to watch the live, just know ahead of time, the audio and video were out of sync. It was just because there was internet issues. There's internet issues right now because there's a lot of construction going around Audio 46. Not their fault, but it's an interesting live, and check it out if you get a chance, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have two headphones sitting here that we actually checked out at Audio 46 on that Thursday night so that we honestly didn't have to during CanJam. So it kind of took care of a couple of impressions. And that is the newly launched Meze Poet and the newly launched Grado, I'm going to say Grado 100 SE. Now, the Poet is a planar open back headphone that retails in for $2,000. The Grado SE, I believe that retails in for $2,700, and pretty different listening impressions, I gotta say. But you know what? Ladies first.
Yeah, so overall, the Grado, I actually really like the build of this one. I like the look of it. I will say it is a beast. It's pretty big on my head. It does come with smaller pads. However, we were told that the bigger ones were better. And
Bigger's always better.
Yeah. You know, and it can get a little heavy for me. But overall, I really loved it. It had bright, clear vocals. But I will say, you told me I would probably eventually
find a headphone that has more presence than what you want.
Yes. And overall, I still really love it. I actually love that we have this one right now to listen to it at length, but it can still get you a little bit up there on certain artists.
Just a little bit. Yeah, I would agree. And that was kind of my same impression that I had of the 100 SE. Now, neither of us listened on the smaller pad, so I'm glad that Audio 46 let me bring this back with me. I'll be doing a full review on this headphone, and I'll kind of find out for myself what the pad differences are. But same thing that Bri said, it's got that brightness to it. So it's got the Grado characteristics going on there, but it wasn't too much for me.
Right.
And I enjoyed the listen. I thought it was nice and clear and sparkly and airy, and it has good low end too. And I think that's probably the bigger pads are going to help with some of that. So I got to say, overall impressions for a Grado, because I haven't listened to many of these, thumbs up, right?
Thumbs up.
Yeah, I'd give it a thumbs up. Now on the Poet, I'm going to let her go first. What do you think?
Yeah, so overall, I kind of like this coppery color on the side, but I'm not a huge fan of the look of it. I don't know what it is. Something's just not doing it for me. One thing I did say in my notes is, unfortunately, I put that it was pretty forgettable. It didn't really do much for me, and that's all I can really say.
Yeah, so what I would say about the Poet is, again, kind of along the same lines as Bri, it is a comfortable headphone. I will start with that. It's got the Dan Clark kind of design here because it's actually using Dan Clark's AMTS technology for the drivers, which is very interesting. But honestly, I'm kind of wondering if that's what is making me not dig this headphone so much. I almost found it a little bit darker for my taste. Not necessarily a dark headphone, but darker for what I like, to where it was just subdued so much that I didn't really get a very solid impression. Now, I should mention that both of these headphones, we listened to them on an NLM 23RM paired up with the Hugo 2 from Cord. So it was a very good pairing. And I'd like to listen to this with a different pairing. Maybe that's gonna bring out a different impression, but yeah, I think forgettable is a good term, because for $2,000, I wouldn't say thumbs up, thumbs down. I would say thumbs to the side, right? Just kind of, I don't know. Right, so the next headphone is actually one that I've spent a lot more time with than Bri, but I gotta tell you guys, this is the first time we've gone to a CanJam and haven't lived in the ZMF room because I've heard everything there. I've got the Bokeh open still. I've heard the Caldera close. I own a few different ZMFs, and I love ZMF, don't get me wrong, but it gave me a chance to check out other things this CanJam. However, I will say that I did get a quality time sitting down with the Aegis amp along with the Caldera closed. And my God, that is such an awesome pairing. And I don't have listening notes necessarily to give you other than it's just almost perfect for my taste. She knows the Caldera closed is on my list to own one day, because that is truly, I think, my favorite headphone. And you did get a chance to listen to it. I know you didn't necessarily write down notes, but what did you think of that listen?
It was incredible. I didn't need to write down notes. I just put a big heart.
Yeah, she really did.
Everything was perfect about it.
She really did. I remember after she got done listening, I was like, what'd you think? And she's like, that's incredible. I was like, yeah, that's enough words. So there is our ZMF segment that we get a chance to do. I guess one of them that I'll talk about is Audiotechnica. Now, we actually checked out an Audiotechnica headphone at Audio 46, and that was the ATH-WB limited edition. It's the wood cup one that's $1,500. I don't need to tell you any impressions. We'll show you our impression. That was bad. Yeah. I didn't even write down notes, just it was not a good listen at all, especially for the price. But I am gonna go the other way and say there is something very positive as well, in that we checked out the RX50, the 70, and the 30. And Bri and I both checked out the 30 together. And I gotta say, like, of those three, I prefer the RX50 the most. It's $150. I got good sub-bass extension with it. I thought it had a very good just mid-range presence for me, that it kind of fit my preferences. I couldn't really tell on stage and things because it's a very loud environment, and with Audio-Technica headphones, especially the open back ones, they are very open back. It's like almost like listening to an unveiled headphone. So it's hard to catch stage and things on that, but very positive listen. The RX30, which is only $100, I was very impressed with for a $100 headphone. And actually, you know what? You checked the RX30 as well.
I did.
And why don't you go ahead with that one?
Honestly, I thought it was incredible for its price point. I could not believe this headphone was $100. It had great vocals, great bass, great instrumentals. What I did notice and what I really liked about it was for singer-songwriters, it kind of brought out this like little bit of a smokier tone in their voice. And I really enjoyed that. So I can't believe it's $100, and yeah.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, the build kind of shows the $100 version of it. I mean, it shows that why it's $100. It's not the most fanciest of builds. Thumbs up to the RX50, and the 30, and even the 70, even though I didn't really write down a lot of notes for that one. All right, so now we're gonna talk about our first IEM. I think I wanna talk about Moses.
I love the Moses.
Yes, she loved the Moses. So tell them why you love the Moses.
Yeah, so first off, just going off of its look, it has a really eye-pleasing kind of design. It's kind of this honeycomb look, very clean and just very nice. And then as far as the sound goes, crystal clear vocals, great instrumentals. I did notice a little bit of a deeper bass to it.
Yes.
And it was really good for live music. I thought it was incredible on live music. So overall, it's probably one of my top faves.
Yeah, and I failed to mention it is from Hercules Audio. It's $4,200. It is not a cheap IEM by any means, but my impression of the Moses was very good as well. And it was in some really solid company, which you'll hear about here in a bit. But yeah, the Moses for me, like she said, it had a really deep extension of bass. And I didn't really pick that up until I did a couple of true bass test tracks. And I was like, whoa, this thing rumbles. But rumbled and stayed in control. And I agree, it had excellent imaging and space and depth. And it is a little bit easier to get a good impression of IEMs at shows because you're more locked into what you're listening to without the environment around you. And the Moses also was extremely beautiful in my opinion and just had an exquisite look to it. And I think it's safe to say that Moses gets a thumbs up.
Can I talk about the Macbeth next?
Would you like me to get the Macbeth?
Yes.
Okay. So we have the Forte Ears Macbeth here. Thanks to Forte Ears, by the way, for letting me bring this home so I could do a full review because somebody here really likes this IEM.
I do. And it retails in at $4,000.
Yes.
And it's worth the $4,000. So
that's a bold statement, but
yeah,
yes.
I mean, it's tough, but it's definitely worth it. So for me, who likes really vocal forward music, this was incredible. Like I cannot describe just how crystal clear the vocals were, the instrumentals, the bass, and then there's just this quiet stillness behind the music.
Yeah.
I've never experienced that with any headphone or IEM. I can't even describe it. If you get a chance to try this one, definitely do it.
Yeah, and what I'll say, what I was talking about with the Moses is the Moses was actually right next to the Macbeth. And it was interesting because Bri was blown away by the Moses and then listened to the Macbeth. And I was like, well, she's like, yeah. So the only difference with this is bass-wise, right? You did even say that the Moses definitely has more bass presence. But this is a phenomenal, both are phenomenal. It
still had
IEMs.
Enough bass for me to enjoy it. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. And a little bit of a spoiler for the full video. But I mean, yeah, it's a really good IEM. And I think it's safe to say, probably giving it 2 thumbs up. All right, so next up is, Schiit. The Valhalla 3 from Schiit. Yes, Schiit Audio. How many times can I say Schiit? S-C-H-I-I-T, by the way. And I loved the Valhalla 3. It is $500. It's not quite released yet from Schiit's website, but I was absolutely blown away by this amp. It's an OTL tube amp, and I've been in the market for an OTL tube amp ever since I really just effed up my bottlehead crack build, as she knows. That went swimmingly bad. But the Valhalla 3, I listened to it paired up to an O-Tour Classic, with the Bifrost 2 DAC. So that was all a pairing I'm very familiar with when I did my listening there. And all I wrote down was this warm, syrupy, just lovely, lush tube sound that I love so much. And it kind of made the O-Tour Classic have a little bit more just warmth and thickness to the sound that I was like, man, I have got to check out the Valhalla 3. Shit, if you happen to be watching this, if you have any demo units you want to do for a review or something, that would be fantastic. But honestly, I think I want to buy the Valhalla 3, to be honest.
Of course he does.
So yeah, good shit. All right, next up, we have the HIFIFORALL Dahlia. And one thing I do regret from CanJam is that I didn't get a on-video interview with Nick of HIFIFORALL, because Nick was such a good dude, and we talked to him in length on both days, really, while we were there. And we got a good listening time with the Dahlia. And you know what? I'll let you go ahead and start with what you thought of the HIFIFORALL Dahlia, because I have it in for a review.
Yeah. So this is another one I'm excited that you are reviewing, because I like the extra time that we get with it. But honestly, I really like the design of this one. Mm-hmm. It's just something about it is eye-pleasing to me. It also has a little bit of like a textured, headband and everything. I just love little details like that. But overall, it was very lightweight, which I appreciate, because like I said, I got a little head, so very lightweight. But the vocals and everything were just perfect for my taste. I think Nick even had me listen to the Water Poem song, I want to say is the name of it. And it was just fantastic. Now, I listened to it on 2 different amps. One was the PD, right?
PD, yep.
So the PD. And I would say, I know once I asked Ryan, I was like, describe what punchy means. And that would be spot on to like what I got from the PD being hooked up to that. It was just the music coming at you, like it was just exciting. It was just incredible. And then I put it on the
Pedis Maximus.
I can't remember the name.
Niche Audio. Shout out to CT of Niche Audio.
So the Pedis Maximus, and it was still a good listen. However, it just didn't have all that excitement coming at me with the PD. So I enjoyed it. I loved the, just getting a chance to listen on this headphone. And I think I want to listen to it again.
Yeah,
I wish we had a PD.
Really quick, I didn't mention this is $880 for the Dahlia. And I'm not going to give you too many of my listening notes. I already actually talked about it in SoCal for that video when I did that one, but I had a lot of positive time with this headphone. The one thing I will say that's not related to listening is the biggest compliment I can give Nick of HIFIFORALL was on the build of a first headphone from, basically a single guy and his wife, a lovely couple that are making headphones. This is a really good first headphone and does not look like something that's kind of like a DIY, kind of a first attempt. Solid job on the build, on the comfort and everything, and you're gonna hear more about my impressions when that video comes out. All right, next up, we got to check out the new Sennheiser headphone, which is the 505 that I believe retails in for like $280, $290, somewhere around there. And I don't want to get too lengthy into this because I didn't feel like I got a great impression at CanJam. It was in a loud environment, once again, open back headphone, but it was another one of those kind of like what you talked about with the Poet that was kind of forgettable for me. It was not necessarily my listening preference, so it's one that I would want more time with, but it was almost a little bit too mellow of a sound for my taste. It did have good bass, I do remember that, but a little mellow and just, I don't know, just something about it just didn't quite fit with my preferences. And what did you think about the 505?
Yeah, I completely agree with Ryan because I wrote forgettable on this one. I think for me, it kind of changed, I noticed it changed like the vocals on my music a little bit. And I don't know if that's that mellowness that you're talking about, but it just kind of sounded a little unnatural to me. And when that happens and I don't have that clarity, I'm ready to move on, so.
All right, we're gonna go back to IEMs, and this one is definitely a more positive response from both of us. Now, we got to check out an IEM from a company I honestly hadn't heard of, QDC, and that is the Emperor and Empress. And I do want to give a shout out to Jude and Brian for his video because they made me want to check out this IEM based off of their video. Now, the Emperor retails in at $2,900. That's what I listened to. The Empress retails in at $3,200, and that's what Bri listened to. And what did you think of the Empress?
Yeah, so overall, the initial look is just gorgeous. It's
Agreed.
kind of, I think Jude said it was like a mother of pearl, and I think the Emperor looks a little more like abalone, although the website did not specify either of those things, so I think it might be their own recreation of that look. However, the Empress, just beautiful. It had an amazing sound. The one thing I think I notated was that every song I listened to sounded live. It had a big stage. The song sounded live. I had to even do like a double take and look at my track just to make sure I wasn't listening to a live song to, you know, to be able to determine that. It was so incredible. But instrumentals hit perfect. It was crystal clear clarity. So it was awesome.
Yeah, and I gotta say, kind of the same thing as far as, you know, my impression of the Emperor being positive. It was very positive. Had good stage. It was punchy. Had a good mid-bass impact. I remember I wrote that down. Snappy. The vocals were, for me, kind of sounded a little bit pushed back, but it was okay. It didn't actually make a detriment to that sound for me. And a good deep extension with a slight touch of sizzle, but that honestly could have been just the tracks I was listening to too. So short CanJam impression of those two, definitely positive. All right, so from there, why don't we talk about our trip to the FiiO booth, because I wanted to check out the FT7, which is their newest planar, and I wanted you to listen to the FT1 because that is kind of the hype train headphone of the year right now of $150. Now the FT7 is $700 for a planar, and why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what you thought of the FT1?
Yeah, so overall, I was really impressed with the fact that it was $150. I thought that, you know, good build, it had good vocals, it had good instruments. I would say that I tried it on some genres and the bass was a little off to me. But however, where it shined was actually with pop music. So if you're into pop music and that's what you're mainly listening to, I think it's an incredible headphone for $150.
Yeah, and I remember you said that you thought it was kind of poppy in a way, and I thought, you know, that's probably smart because it's a headphone that's $150, so it's going to be very affordable for a lot of people. And let's face it, pop music is probably the most genre of music. It's the most popular genre of music, right? So I mean, it's good to have a headphone that kind of fits that, you know, based on what Bri was saying on her impressions. Now, the FT7 for me was not so positive, I gotta say. It was detailed, it was clean, but it was bright for me. And for my tolerance of brightness, that's saying something. And I think it's also because I didn't get a ton of low end out of it either. So I wasn't overly impressed with it. It's another one I would need a lot more time with because it's, again, open back, you know, busy area because FiiO was very busy with lots of people checking out that headphone. So again, I'm not gonna say a big old thumbs down. I'm just gonna say, eh. And what would you say on the FiiO FT1?
For what it is, I'll give it a thumbs up.
All right, there you go. Okay, and next one is another one that I get confused with FiiO because the Fosi headphone was at CanJam, and it's actually not out yet, and I don't think they have a name for it yet, but it's a new Fosi headphone, and it's planar. It's their first headphone from Fosi Audio, and it's only supposed to be $500. So I was told from Rigo at Audio 46, he's like, you need to check out the Fosi headphone. So we went down there. I had a good sit with it. I listened on, I believe, actually his Enlium 23RM and the Hugo 2 from Cord, and that was an incredible listen. And that's another one of those where for a first headphone, sometimes that can be a little bit of a miss for some companies. I think Fosi's actually got a little bit of a diamond in the rough with that headphone, to be perfectly honest. It was getting a lot of listening time at CanJam too. I saw a lot of different reviewers and things checking out the Fosi headphone. What I found of it was that I thought it had a good bass extension to it. I thought it was nice and wide sounding, had good presence, got a touch bright for me at times, but it wasn't overly bad, and just an overall very impressive experience listening to the Fosi. And I know you kind of regret not sitting down with it.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing you with it and I did not get a chance to listen. And then after he went on and on about how great it was, I was like, man, I should listen to that.
And I gotta say, I thought the build was spot on. And what I loved about it was the Fosi vendor there that talked to me about it asked me, what did you think? What would you do different? I love it when they ask questions like that instead of how much did you like it? So,
yeah.
But so that you can speak a little bit here, you got to check out a headphone that I bet you were blown away by. Why don't you talk about the Imannis?
Yeah, that is a gorgeous headphone. I mean, it's
cheap.
Yeah, it's $9,000, right?
Yeah.
$9,000, but it's beautiful. Just the outside design is gorgeous. He set me up, and I think he had this, it was Someone to Watch Over Me. And I know like the Broadway versions of that song, but this was like a nice, beautiful, jazzy, you know, mix of it. And everything was just kind of like perfection. So I just kind of melted into the music and enjoyed it. And unfortunately, I had to get off of there because people were waiting. So
yeah, and the cool thing about that was we checked out the Imannis. She checked out that headphone on day 2.
Yeah.
Right at the start. There was nobody around. It was a nice, quiet room in the back of the area. And yeah, I mean, I was blown away by it in SoCal, so I wanted her to get that experience too. And between the Fosi and the Imannis, yeah, definite thumbs up.
So let's go back to IEMs for a minute.
Okay.
Because these next two, I feel like we had a little bit of different impressions on.
Yes, funny enough, and she's referring to the DITA IEMs, the Mecha and the ProjectM. Now, do you want to talk about one of those first?
Yeah, I'll start with the ProjectM, which retails in at $325.
Yep.
For me, I didn't think it had the clarity that I like in my music. It was very pretty. I felt like the vocals were just a little brushed over, maybe just a little bit warmer than I like. There's just something about it that, yeah, it wasn't my taste.
Which is hilarious because my listening notes, and I'm looking at them right now, was literally, it was too bright for me. It had good low end. Cymbals had this metallic shimmer to them and just did not fit my preference. I did not care for it. I know you didn't care for it, but for completely opposite reasons, which is funny, that'll happen. Yeah. Now, I listened on the DC Elite, you listened on the RU7, and we both listen to different music, so that's always something to take into account.
I definitely think that could be
yes, but why don't you talk about the Mecha?
Yeah, so it did have more clarity for me, which I liked. I would say it had more of a richer sound, which was nice. And the stage, I didn't feel like it was real big, but it wasn't bad. And then really the cable, at first it was a little bit different of a cable, and I liked it when I first touched it, and then it got kind of tangled up, and then I decided I didn't like the cable.
She was just done with it. I remember that part of it. Yeah, I mean, I also had a positive impression with the Mecha. It is $900, so it's, you know, almost 3 times the price of the ProjectM. But I wrote down it has an echoey kind of sound to it. That's kind of what I picked up from it. Deep bass and rumble, softness to notes, and pretty vocals. So overall, I would call that a pretty positive impression for the Mecha and a pretty unpositive impression for the ProjectM. So guess what's next?
I don't know.
You know I'm gonna do it. I am an idiot, but I love the name Nunchaku from iBasso. And I was so excited to check out this new dongle because I have the DC Elite and I love the iBasso DC Elite. So I wanted to check out the Nunchaku. It is a dongle tube amplifier, tube DAC amp. It's only $300 and it was in the Bloom Audio room. Shout out to Bloom Audio, by the way. And we went in there and we sat down and I listened to the Nunchaku with, I want to say it was the Meze 105 Air, and honestly, now that I look back on it, probably wasn't the best headphone for me to pair up with it because even though I did get a little bit warmer of a nature of a sound, I don't feel like I got the full Nunchaku experience that I want to get. So I'm hoping I can get that into review at some point just to check it out more because I know a lot of people were praising that dongle DAC. It's cool. It's got a cool build to it. It's got an LCD screen on it, which is something unique for iBasso and iBasso. And yeah, it was pretty cool. But while I was doing that, you were checking out a campfire IEM, I think, right?
Yeah, so it was the Clara. I'm not sure.
Clara, yeah.
Clara. But I didn't really get much of a listen. It was very big, heavy, and it didn't have the little ear loop things, which...
right. It probably comes with that, but they didn't have it hooked up.
But for being so big and heavy for my ears, I've never had an IEM that I couldn't keep in. So it just kept falling out and falling out. I couldn't get it sealed. I couldn't get it to stay in. And so overall, I don't have much of an opinion, so...
So that's kind of a incomplete.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Nunchaku, quite honestly, just because I felt like I needed to listen to something different with it. So hopefully at some point. All right, so this next one is actually one of the last things that we checked out at CanJam. And that was actually Crinical's new IEM kind of company that he's launching, the CrinEar. Now, I wanted to listen to all 3 of them that he has launching, but he was so busy with that table the entire time at CanJam that we did at least get we did at least get to listen to the Meta. Now the Meta was actually one that I felt would be my preference because it is the more meta, you know, whatever, kind of what everybody likes if you want to call it that way. But it's more of a U-shaped sound. It's got heavy bass. It's got good sparkly air to it, but it wasn't overly bright. It was actually right at the point that I like it. And I gotta admit, I got done listening to the Meta and I looked at Bri and I was like, I want to buy this IEM. It's $300. I also thought it was beautiful for an IEM at this price point. I thought it was well made. And I actually ran up to Critical afterwards because I couldn't catch him. And I said, hey, I just want to tell you, you knocked it out of the park with this one, in my opinion. And I want to buy this IEM when they launch. So I asked him when. Now, what did you think of the Meta?
You know, it was nice. It was nice for me. I do think that it was very easy listening. It had good sound. I feel like I crave a little bit more clarity than what it was giving, which I wish I could have had a chance to listen to the reference. I believe that's the name of it.
Yeah.
So it was another one there.
The Meta's fun. I like fun.
Yeah. Again, I still think it maybe are different styles of music too.
No, absolutely.
So.
But still, very good IEMs from CrinEar.
Yeah.
Did you know that we listen to a headphone that is the jack of all listening? It is the Abyss Joel. I'm sorry, I'm an idiot. But yes, the Abyss Joel. It is a planar headphone from Abyss. It's their least expensive one they've come out with. It's $1,899. Call it $1,900. It was getting probably the biggest hype at CanJam that I heard of a headphone. And it was worth it in my opinion. So I listened to it on a couple of different setups. So I listened to it with the new Valencia collaboration amp from Zeos, and that actually had a WA22 from Woo as the preamp. It was an extreme setup, like a really cool setup. And then I also listened on the Kenzie from Amps and Sound. Shout out to Justin from Amps and Sound. I remember I got done listening to the Joel on the Valencia setup, and I looked over at Norm from Abyss, and I was like, that's just unfair. I was like, because it sounded so good. Now the Joel, to give you a little bit of my impression of what I heard, because we also listened to that at Audio 46, it is just a nice and spacious sound. It's got good low end. It had enough clarity for my liking. It was smooth and just a really damn good listen, I gotta say. And I never had a track or a pairing or anything that I thought sounded bad, which is also a good thing because I felt like it paired up really well with different amps. And I think you probably like the Joel as well.
I did. I think overall, and I listened to it on the same 3 setups that Ryan listened to it on. So I did get a couple different times. But overall, I think the Valencia was probably my favorite that it was on. And you had me listen to a Beth Hart song that was just, everything was just incredible. Yeah, incredible about it. So.
And you know, the other thing I'll say about the Joel is I love the build of it too. I know they had to kind of, I don't want to say dumb things down, but they had to, obviously take it down to make the price go down. But it spoke to me. It was that all black look. I liked it. It was very comfortable as well. And so I'm pretty excited about the Joel.
Yeah. And I believe it was talk of CanJam as well. It seemed to be a fave.
Yes. Okay, now from the high of the Joel to the low of just something that didn't impress us. And that is honestly, unfortunately, the Dan Clark Audio Noir X. Now I have a theory. We listened to the Noir X in the same room with Amps and Sound. And Justin, big shout out to you again. It was really nice talking to you again and catching up with you at CanJam. But I listened to the Noir X on an Amps and Sound tube amp, and I just don't think that was the right pairing for me. I want to listen to it on a solid state, so I'm going to call this more incomplete than unimpressed because it was just kind of, I hate to say it, but it was just kind of a boring sound that I got listening to the Noir X, and I don't think you were that impressed either.
I really wasn't. I mean, I'll admit, like, it was good. I mean, good vocals, good bass, good, you know, but I think overall I wasn't a huge fan of the look of it. I feel like too many fingerprints all over it. I mean, there's a lot of people putting them on.
There was like a finger orgy going on in that cup.
Yeah, so overall I'm not a big fan of that glass kind of look and how easy it gets smudged up. And then, yeah, music was good. Nothing really stood out to me about it.
Yeah.
It didn't really give me, you know, and I also noticed that ear pads didn't feel as soft. That's one thing I always remember with Dan Clark is the ear pads, but.
To be fair, I think it's also because I love the E3 so much. And so I had a lot of high expectations and I really wish I would have listened to it on a solid state. So I will do that at some point and hopefully have more of a complete opinion on the Noir X.
My turn.
No. Okay. I'm going to guess we're probably going to talk about an IEM based on what's left to talk about.
Yes, yes. So that would be the Flip Ears Legion and the Artha. Now, we both listened to each of them, and again, we both had kind of differing opinions on this, but
yeah.
Brian is going to tell you about the Legion. I'm going to tell you about the Artha. So the Artha, it was just a gorgeous IEM. It's sterling silver. It's kind of carved filigree like in it. Just a really cool, unique design other than other, IEMs. But for me, everything just aligned. I had the bass, I had the instrumentals, I had the clarity, I had the vocals. I just was feeling the music, and they asked me about if I messed with the switches. So I noticed both my switches were up and everything was just beautiful. So it's one of my favorites. So why don't you tell them about the Legion?
And by the way, the Artha is $2,500. So I liked the $800 one, the Legion. And I gotta say, shout out to Water Cooler Gang, because we were going through a chat on there and somebody said, check out the Flip Ears Legion. And so I went over there and I said, hey, we were told to check these out. I sat down with the Legion, and I gotta say, I listened to the first track, I don't remember what it was, on my DC Elite, and I thought, okay, this is pretty good. Nothing's sounding wrong here. I went to the next track, and then I think I listened to 3 or 4 tracks because I just could not give up listening to the Legion. It had everything that I love about sound. It had good bass response, it had good mid-range presence, it was full, it had a good enough spaciousness to it, and just not overly bright, and it was almost a perfect tuning for my preferences. And it's actually an IEM for the first time that I could say I actually would want to go out and buy at that price point, because I'm typically not somebody that likes to purchase IEMs at a higher price point. I go for headphones, but this was one, I love the look. I dug it so much. Now, some people I know probably didn't, because, it could be gaudy to some people, but not to me. This thing was incredible.
It kind of has like a Roman warrior helmet on it. It's really cool.
Really, really cool. And I did listen to the Artha, but to be fair, that was after the Legion. And I think my switches were a little bit different than Bri, but I was like, no, I prefer the Legion. So we both are going to say a big thumbs up for those, right?
Yes.
All right, so to round out the list of impressions, actually the last 2 were unfortunately just me. And that is the Woo WA-24. It is their flagship tube amplifier that they just released. It's $13,000, and I got to listen to it on, I know it's funny. I got to listen to it on the Composer, which is a headphone I was very familiar with because, I did do a review on that headphone, and I thought that headphone sounded really good. $2,700, excellent sounding headphone. Now I gotta say, I listened to that particular tube amplifier, and I believe it was the Holo Cyan 2 DAC, but I may be wrong on that because they had one of the setups with the Cyan 2, so a DAC I'm familiar with. And it was effortless. And that's actually what I wrote down on my listening notes. Effortless sound, natural, but very musical. My kind of presence that was dialed in just right. And yeah, I did write paired up to the Cyan 2, slight warmth and pristine details. I loved the sound of that tube amp. And it's a shame it's $13,000 because it's beautiful. You gotta admit, it's a beautiful tube amplifier. And so the other thing that I listened to that Bri didn't get a chance to was the new Dunu Arashi. Now, I listened to the Arashi at SoCal, so this isn't a new impression that I'm giving you guys, but once again, I'm impressed by the Arashi. It is a beautiful headphone, first of all. It's actually probably one of the most stunning planar headphones that I've seen. It may be a touch too bright for me, but that doesn't mean I don't recognize that I think it's a very good headphone, and definitely gets a thumbs up for me, as does the WA-24, and I'll put it on loan as I sell my vehicle to buy that tube amp. So, yeah.
So this next part, we did some interviews, and of course we had to start in the ZMF room.
Of course.
So do you want to tell them about your interview with Zach?
Yeah, Zach is the man. So yeah, I wanted to talk to Zach a little bit about the Bokeh Open and maybe some other upcoming headphones that he might have, and why don't you check it out? All right, I'm gonna talk with the man, Zach.
I'm the man.
ZMF, and ask him a few fun questions here.
Yeah, Zach here. Zach here at CanJam.
Anything?
That's where we are.
Now the newest thing's the Bokeh Open, obviously, right? Oh yeah, it's not doing the. Yeah.
It's not following me.
It's not following you. I saw the new chassis. When did you guys come up with that?
The chassis for the Boca Open?
Well, the new.
Oh, the custom shop chassis
Yes.
with the lines in it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, sometime around late last year, I just, for the more expensive custom shop type headphones, as we move towards there, I'm trying to put things in place so that as we get to the custom shop in, 9 to 12 months, that there's kind of a unique experience that will give you a little bit different aesthetic than the stock headphones, but the same kind of form factor. So there's just a number of things we're working on like that that'll kind of make those headphones feel a little more special and unique in their own way. So this year you'll see some of those custom shop type aesthetic things rolling out.
Right.
And you'll see them in the regular drops like we usually do this year. That's not the regular drops won't go away.
Right.
They'll just, give you another layer or way to get more specific ZMFs if there's a certain wood or look you want or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I liked it. I took a couple pictures of it.
It's got those lines. You can rub your fingers along them, close your eyes, and think of a better place.
So I got to ask, because I know you were just in HiFiCon, Bay Area group, and I know they hit you up about, do you have anything planned for like a bokeh type thing and a planar?
Yeah, so there's an odd thing that's happening, which I realized the hard way, which is that the oval shape planar is a much bigger driver and costs a lot more to make because there's so many more magnets.
Oh, wow.
So, at some point there will be a higher end ZMF that has many more magnets and a much thinner diaphragm. We're not trying to replicate anything out there, so it's, I don't know what the timeline for that is. Then on the other side, this year we'll be releasing a round but less expensive planar that's in the $1,500 to $1,700 range most likely.
Nice.
That will be a little lower impedance and a little not easier to drive per se as far as dB per milliwatt, but a little easier to drive for like low amp impedance and all that stuff, because the Caldera is 60 ohms and this is going to be 35 ohms ish.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the next. We're trying to expand the planar lineup with our Caldera magnet technology and all that stuff. So that's kind of what's on the horizon, along with the custom shop. And then I do want to try to do a DIY headphone that people can 3D print at home at some point this year.
Oh, that's cool.
Kind of, try to get back to like that. Just what got me into the hobby, which was modding headphones. I was like, it's really hard to make a headphone in the United States with our own machine shop and all that stuff for less than the Boca. But if we can do one that's 3D printed and, either send the parts to people or the files, then we can have something that we do just above our cost and, get back to the roots of ZMF, which was me modding Fostex T50 RPs, which is, I don't know, fun, like just really fun for me because it's gives me a better way to interact with the community than like, here's this hunk of wood headphone to buy kind of thing. So that's one of the things I'm most excited about. But CanJam New York's always a great time, and I'm happy to be here. It's always kind of a nice break from the workshop stuff, and hopefully you guys come out and see us in the workshop. We can share around our new space, which is...
I want to visit you guys. You're not that far from me, like a couple hours, so
Indiana.
That'd be very cool to visit. So
yeah, it's more spacious and room to breathe a little bit.
Yeah,
which is nice.
I was just talking to Bevan about, I thought it was funny, there's a guy in our Discord that's like waiting very patiently for his Boca Open. I think you probably have heard about some
we're doing so many Bocas. We're like only making Bocas right now because we're trying to do a thing. I mean, this year one of the big changes I'm trying to make is that a lot of people are used to waiting 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks or more for a ZMF, and we're going to try to make sure the dichotomy between stock headphone and custom headphone are different timelines now. So one thing we're doing right now is making sure that before we release any more limited editions, we get totally caught up on stock headphones so that they actually ship in 1 to 2 weeks at the most and are really in stock as much as they can be for a custom handmade wood headphone. But it'll help, we're going to do a longer return period on that at some point too, where you get 30 days instead of the 14. It's just something that I think will help people try ZMS versus feeling like they all get put in the same bucket, even if it's a stock wood headphone.
Right.
So that there's a little difference.
But you guys got to deal with some unique things, though. I mean, with wood, I was talking to Bevan about, sometimes it's warped when it comes in, and then you can't use it, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean that's one of the difficulties with mostly the really exotic woods is you'll get you'll pay a ton of money for some black and white ebony or one of these things that comes from a fallen tree in a rainforest or whatever. And I know I don't go to import the wood myself. I find all the guys in the U.S. who bring it in legally and all that sustainability stuff. But then you get it and it's literally wet. It's like 40% humidity. You have to wait months until it's dry enough to cut. And then even if you cut it, sometimes it doesn't work out. So, getting those burled wood headphones, Amboina burl, black and white ebony, red Malay burl, Buckeye burl, any of those things that are super beautiful, they're just more prone to splits and cracking. And that's why we try to tell people hey, some of these little marks, that's just part of you want a headphone that looks really cool. There's just going to be natural little things on it. So, I definitely like those little aberrations, but I can totally see someone coming from something that's molded together, it being a weird experience for us working with us for the first time.
Yeah. Oh, I get that. Cool.
I like those little imperfections too. So.
Yeah, I mean, what is
There's
life?
people who appreciate the naturalness.
We're all dented a little bit in our history of being alive. So why not have a headphone that's had the same life as?
That's what we said when our son fell and got a nice scar in his cheek. I'm like, hey, he's an individual now.
Yeah, you've made it to a lifehood. I didn't, at least the scars from somewhere else,
right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks, Zach.
Yeah, thank you.
So the next interview, I know you were out of the room. You were, doing something. I don't remember what. But I happened to be talking with Jack and Mike of Woo and actually got a chance to interview Jack of Woo about the WA-24. And here it is.
Hello, everyone. Hey, how are you? Fine.
Good. How's it going? Hey,
Good.
I just wanted to ask you, talk about the newest thing from Woo.
Well, our newest amplifier is W24 20th anniversary amplifier. This is our latest amplifier. It's been in the work for years, after 20 years in business, so we came down to this, our best design, best circuitry, flagship amplifier, I can actually walk you through, just take a look while I'm talking. Yeah. So we have two units here, two W24. They're same amplifier. I'm going to walk to you. The other one, which I have with the new tubes, I just got them from the tube manufacturer, called a PP3 250 tubes. So we're going to sell this as an upgrade tubes. Yeah. So the amplifier itself, you can see it's really streamlined, really a distinctive look. Yeah. It might look like a W23 Lunar. But
yes.
This one, it doesn't have an external power supply. The power supply is built into it. Yeah. And it uses solid state rectifier. The tubes work as a parallel single-ended class 8, 2 tubes per channel. Yeah. And so the setup's really clean, Yeah. Very,
I love the aesthetic. It's a beautiful amp. All of your amps.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So we are really pleased with the sound as it is really pure. You hear all the music. Nothing matters. Yeah. Yeah. People have been plugging in all kinds of headphones. Including IEMs, even the Sesfara and FiiO. Someone have the Imannis here. Yeah. And the Bass. It drives sorts of headphones without any issue.
Nice. Very nice. Is there anything, now I know you had, the Tube Mini was probably the most recent thing before that, right?
Tube Mini?
Yeah, as far as what you come out with.
Yes, that actually before the 24, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know you did a review on it. Thanks again, yeah.
Absolutely, love the Tube Mini.
Yeah. Actually, you own one, yeah.
I own it,
yeah.
yes, with the power base.
Very nice, yeah.
Very correct. The power base is almost needed to get the most out of it.
Right, it makes it more user-friendly, dock it on it, and forget about it, and improve the sound, yeah.
Yes. Yes. Is there anything in the works for Woo right now, or?
Well, we're always working on something new, something like we've been always not ready to share yet, but soon, yeah, maybe sometime this year, yeah. We're always doing all kind of stuff, not just one. I tell you that,
Right.
Yeah. So
Very cool. Well, Jack, I appreciate a couple minutes of your time today.
stopping fine, yeah.
Thank you.
So while we were in the Woo Room, they also shared with Abyss, and you had a chance to talk with Norm.
Norm! He's probably hating me for saying that right now, but...
So let's check that out.
Yeah.
All right, guys, I'm here with Norm from Abyss, and the Joel, gotta say, has gone over really well at CanJam, everybody I talked to. So how did the Joel come to be?
Biggest problem with our headphones is that they're not accessible. The more people listen to the headphones, the more they hear our sound, the more they get what we're trying to say and understand our message. So the mission was just something that more people can have. So and the way to do that, find efficiencies, reduce price, and target that with something that's also unique. So at $1,900, we don't think there's anything that sounds like it. I'm an enthusiast myself. I have a bunch of different headphones, so I'm very pleased with how it sits in my collection. And in our true Abyss fashion, even though we did reduce costs and efficiencies, we tried to do it without making sacrifices to build quality or sound. So they might not feel as fancy as a Diana or a 1266, but they're going to sound and feel and be as comfortable as those other headphones.
Right, and they do. I can vouch for that. I listened to it on a few different amps here. I listened to it actually at Audio 46 the other day, even on like a portable source, and it sounded excellent. They can scale.
Easier to drive. You're going to get plenty of volume out of just about anything. There is still some equipment synergy there, but if you like your source, you're going to like it with the Joel still, so that'll actually match. And yes, it does scale. That's what we're doing here. Every station we have is wildly different scales. We've got people that are like, yes, we have a very expensive tube amp, but it's plugged into a relatively budget DAC amp, and we have people switching and enjoying it on the thing that's 1/3 the price too. So
yeah, absolutely. I've been impressed.
Yeah.
So
great for the enthusiast as well, because not many things have an upgrade path, and if you get the Joel, then it's also compatible with all the Diana accessories too. So if later on your tastes change and you're like, I really want a warmer sound, it's just a set of pads.
Right.
So and that's tough to find, I think. So I'm really happy that we've stuck with compatibility across all our accessories.
Yeah.
So good job, engineering team.
that are behind us here. Yeah, I know. Like I said, I think it's a huge success for you guys, and I hope it gets more people into Abyss, because it's
thank you.
It's really good, man. Like really good. I walked away just listening to it on the Valencia with the WA-22, and my word was, it's unfair how good that sounded. So yeah, congrats.
Yeah, and thank you to Zeos for letting us the Valencia.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Norm.
Thanks.
All right, and finally, and probably one of our most favorite times that we had at CanJam, of really any CanJam, was this next interview that we got to do with Phil, who is Pud Headphones, and you can talk about Phil's company of...
Yeah, it's Pud Small Batch Headphones, and if you haven't seen them before, they are pretty fantastic.
They are unforgettable.
Probably the most fun booth at CanJam, and probably the busiest, I would say. Yeah. Everybody wants to put on one of those.
Kids were lining up. Dogs and cats were lining up. I mean, it was cool to check out Thumpy, right?
Yeah. Oh, Thumpy was great.
Yeah. And here's that interview with Phil.
Okay, guys, I am here with Philip, known as Pud online, of these just bonker crazy but awesome headphones that he designs. And I guess the big thing I wanted to ask you is, where do you come up with these ideas?
So each one of these headphones is addressing some acoustic phenomenon or trying to solve some problem. So for example, these right here, this is called the Thrust. The idea with these is, well, we all like open back headphones because the sound that comes off of the back of the speaker doesn't get trapped in an ear cup and reflect. So these are not only open back, I call these aggressively open back. So there's what you call a radial horn, which is like a horn, like a clip speaker or something, like a horn-loaded speaker that's violently ejecting the back wave. So those are like the most open back in theory you can get. Let's see what else. So like that bulbous looking headphone that this gentleman is trying on right now, these are 60 hertz Helmholtz resonators. So for those who don't know what a Helmholtz resonator is, it's that thing when you blow in a Coke bottle and it goes ooh, and that sound can be tuned. Let me put this down. So that sound can be tuned. In this case, it's 60 hertz. So the sound from the back of the no, you got it. So the sound comes off of the back of the driver, and it interferes with itself and it multiplies. So you get basically like a passive subwoofer happening there. And then the bass medallion, it's a 100-watt amplifier and a 6-inch high excursion driver, and that solves the issue that sometimes people say in the headphone world. Well, the problem with headphones is you can't feel the bass like you can in a home theater or a concert or something. This solves that problem. In fact, well, he hasn't started yet, but nobody has ever worn that and not had a huge grin on their face, because when that bass kicks.
Right.
Good timing. He didn't even hear me say that. So that's wild. It's an amazing feeling. Here, let me show you one more. Thank you very much. So this is called Moon, and this solves the problem of well, when you're listening to speakers, if part of the music is hard panned, let's say hard panned left, your right ear can still hear it. But on headphones, if it's hard panned left, only your left ear hears it. So this solves that problem. They call it crossfeed sometimes, and this is passive crossfeed. So each ear can hear a little bit of what the other ear is hearing. This is an awesome one over here. This one is based on the iconic, famous Nautilus speaker. Basically, it's another way to dissipate the back wave. So you just have this shape where you just have a lot more volume than a normal headphone. And then the ones with the pink ones with the horns, I don't know if you can see over there, that's another, it's what's called a transmission line to get rid of the back wave. This one, everybody says this is my best sounding headphone by far. You make enough headphones, you're gonna strike gold every now and then. One's gonna sound like amazing. And this one it has an unbelievable sound. So there's 4 drivers in each ear, as you can hear, and something about so the way that they're wired, both in series and parallel, all 4 drivers act as one, and so to get to the volume level that you want, your listening volume level, each driver is working a quarter as hard. So the drivers are barely moving, but you have this huge, almost like for those familiar with like Planar magnetic headphones, one of the things that we love about them is how big the driver is, and you really feel it, as opposed to a little dynamic driver that goes right into your ear. This, you're getting that effect, and then some. And the other funny part about this are these gigantic ear pads that were custom made for me by Deconi, which is a great ear pad company. So I could go on and on, but you get the general gist.
Yeah. So Bri was asking me a little bit ago, do you sell any of these ever? Or is this just like a personal
It's just kind of a personal,
Yep.
some say an art project, something like that. No, they're just for show and just for fun. There's pretty much one of each. I don't really mass produce them, and it's all for that smile on the face that people. Oh, wait, there's one more. There's a million more. This one,
my favorite.
Yeah, a lot of people love this one. So this one's called the Headphone Daddy. And what this is, it turns out this thing, not only is it great for scrubbing, but it's the perfect open cell damping material that just works awesome. This one has a very special sound, and it sounds similar to like maybe a Sennheiser HD600, or like one of those headphones that's kind of universally liked. And this one does that, so that's pretty cool.
Well, that's amazing. Hey, I appreciate you taking time to explain all that, because I've been wanting to talk to you forever on this stuff.
The feeling is mutual. I'm a big fan of your work, and thanks for having me on.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me give a little more volume. That is incredible.
You really feel it?
I think I need this to fold.
All right, so before we get to the best in show, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about one really cool experience that I had, and that was kind of meeting, I would call him somewhat of an idol of mine, or somebody I looked up to, because watching this guy's videos kind of got me the gusto, or whatever you want to call it, to actually start my own channel, and that's Brian of Bad Seed Tech. I love this guy's videos. I've watched him for so long. He used to do a ton of audio stuff, and then he branched into tech, and now he kind of does both audio and tech. And he was at CanJam in New York, and he actually was at CanJam last year in New York, but I never saw him there, so I missed him. This time around, he always had an entourage of people around him, but I was like, I'm sorry, I gotta go up and meet this guy. So I went up, introduced myself, shook his hand, and the biggest surprise I got was that he actually knew who I was, which was pretty cool.
So cool. He came up, he basically said to Ryan, hey, wait, I know who you are. You're the guy with the whiskey. So
no joke. He
yeah,
did.
really
I thought
cool.
that was pretty cool. So anyways, I got to say, in honor of that, Brian at Bad Seat Tech, cheers to you. Very cool to meet you.
And now for the best of show, which I know we were supposed to pick 3. However, I kind of have 4 because I have a tie.
I did the same thing.
Okay, good. So my 2 that tied were the Artha and the Empress. And I mean, I could not say much more about them. They both like just hit on so many levels for me. Both were beautiful. So overall, I'd have to say those 2, and I think they're both in the same price point. So
yep, they are.
I mean,
I remember
good.
I remember saying that to some of the water cooler guys who I was talking to. I was like, well, hey, she's got expensive hearing, so she picked some ones that, yeah,
Hey,
costly.
Yeah, well.
But all right, so my tie that I have is actually the CrinEar Meta, which is $300, by the way, and the Schiit Valhalla 3, which is $500, by the way. I could get both of those for still less than one of your...
You got me into this hobby.
No, that's very true. No, but seriously, those are my tie only because I couldn't decide between the 2, and they really both impressed me that much to make my list. And this isn't necessarily a top 3. This is just one of our personal ties that we have. Now, what's your next one?
So my next one is a headphone, and it was the Dahlia. So one of my top faves. Like I said, just a beautiful design, beautiful clarity, just everything's beautiful about it. So
yeah, I'm not surprised at all by that. And mine actually was the Abyss Joel. I mean, seriously, the Joel blew me away that much that when I, paired it up, even at Audio 46, if you remember, we had the Poet and we had the Joel. And I was like, Joel, 8 days a week. I mean, that's how good I thought the Joel was. And yeah, very solid headphone. So what was your last?
None other than the Macbeth.
Of course.
And I already explained all the beauty that came with that one. So yeah.
And that was no surprise because I know that absolutely blew you away for an IEM. And mine's also an IEM, and that was the Flip Ears Legion. I mean, that thing was absolutely incredible for $800. I mean, I do remember, and I didn't mention this when I talked about the Legion, but when I looked at the rep and I said, how much is this? And he said, well, how much do you think it is? I said, I don't know, probably $2,000, $2,500. He's like, everybody's saying that. It's $800. Please don't raise the price of the Legion. But it's incredible for $800. And yeah, easily makes one of my best in show. And in wrapping up this video, I do want to give one more mention, and that is to the Water Cooler Awards ceremony that happened on Saturday night after CanJam. A lot of the water cooler guys had a poll that they took leading into CanJam about their best in show of 2024, or best headphones, best amps, best IEMs. And no surprise, the Imannis was on there, so they won an award. The Forte Ears Macbeth won an award as well, the Holo Cyan 2, and there were some other ones as well. And it was really cool to see those guys walk up there, kind of like the Oscars, and truly be humbled in accepting an award. And that's what it's all about. And it was really cool to see that and witness that. And thank you so much to the Water Cooler Gang for putting that on, because that was a fun experience to witness and to be a part of.
And with that, we want to thank you all for watching this video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you attended CanJam and there was something that you liked, please drop those in the comments below. Tell us what you listened to.
Yes.
If you didn't have a chance to attend CanJam, what did you like about this video? Was there something we talked about that has your interest? Let us know.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, like she said. And until the next CanJam, we will see you in the next one.
There's never enough bass.
No, there's never enough bass.